For fuck's sake, can you at least try to stay out of trouble? It wasn't bad enough that Charlie Pruitt nearly sent the Volunteers into the abyss with his actions. The direct payments to 2 players outside of NIL rules, a plot to get around unofficial recruitment visit limits, and illegal campus visits taking place during the COVID-19 period. You remember that resulted in over 200 fucking violations and 18 level 1 violations, right? You didn't think losing 28 scholarships, vacating 11 wins, going on a 5-year probation, and having to pay an $8 million fine wasn't bad enough? Balls, I have never had beef with you in my life, but frankly, if you weren't so good at sucking up the Big Daddy SEC and the NCAA not wanting to punish the active roster of players during that first investigation, you could have been banned for a long fucking time from the Bulls. When the NCAA calls it one of the worst cases they had ever seen, you knew you were flirting with death itself. Instead, you were allowed to walk away with those punishments and continue hopelessly trying to compete in the SEC. Now you've gone and apparently fucked up again. It's like a fly drawn to a lantern with these fuckers, I swear to God. So what'd you do this time, Tennessee? Something NIL. Hold on. Now that I mentioned that, I just remembered something. Why the fuck does this feel familiar? God fucking damn it. Right, okay, so the linchpin around Tennessee's case right now revolves around NIL, which is quickly becoming a trend across college football. The NCAA has made it no secret it was cracking down on NIL violations, and goddamn is it. Florida State is already under a 2-year probation after an assistant coach and their booster from the NIL collective representing Florida State went to a prospect with a $15,000 deal. The Florida Gators, meanwhile, are also under the microscope. The violations are still not public, but it's assumed to be a similar situation as a now defunct NIL group for the Gators tried to recruit quarterback Jada Rashonda under an NIL deal in 2022. He signed a letter of intent and then rescinded, fucking off to Arizona State. Here's the deal with Tennessee, which according to Sports Illustrated, who is in the middle of a Ottoman Empire collapse simulator at the moment, they are saying that it is something around NIL and that the violations are major. For whatever reason, they decided to point out their next star quarterback, Nico Iamaleava, since there's rumors that his NIL deal was worth over $8 million. Hey dipshits, just because he might have gotten 10 Brinks trucks backed up to his dorm room, that doesn't mean it's the problem, or that it would be a good idea to single him out. Caleb Williams got tens of millions in NIL, and no one batted a fucking eyelash. Normally, I would give good sports journalism the benefit of the doubt, but considering the current state of SI, I'm inclined to take this shit with a heavy fistful of salt. That said, Tennessee did respond to the NCAA when they began the investigation privately with a scathing letter. They put the blame squarely on the NCAA themselves, basically saying the current rules are creating chaos and are failing all other member institutions. They also point out the contradiction that these outside collective groups providing NIL money to these players are allowed to meet with the players, discuss paying the players, and sign contracts, yet can't fucking recruit them. I'm totally serious. That's the fucking rule. I'm not gonna lie, I tried to figure out what the actual rule was, but the NCAA keeps fucking with these rules each and every year. Since 2021, a new updated PDF with new guidelines has been going out to these schools as both banning and adding certain practices every time. It might not sound that hard to the average Joe, but keep in mind, thousands of people are getting new guidelines every year right after or in the middle of learning previous ones. These updates can be easy to miss unless someone explicitly points them out and explains it clearly, which is not guaranteed. If your terms and conditions at your workplace were updated every year, do you reread the whole thing again and pay meticulous attention to know the small details and differences? And if you don't, you might get your fucking company sanctioned? No, of course you fucking don't. The violations in Tennessee, committed under previous head coach Charlie Pruitt, were obvious and easily avoidable. You went against rules the NCAA explicitly said not to do. The COVID recruiting, the head coach paying players out of his own damn pocket, and everything else were textbook violations that were clear and obviously against the rules. Pruitt was a fucking moron who blatantly went against the rules and got the book thrown at him. Granted, he wasn't the only one, as Michigan also committed penalties that were during the COVID dead period as well, but they weren't nearly as bad. And the Connor Stallion situation was well after and completely unrelated to that bullshit. Do not get me going on that again. This time, though, what the fuck did Tennessee do wrong? If what we are hearing is correct, it's basically no different than Florida and Florida State. They were following what the other schools around them were just basically doing. If that's the case, that's not 3 schools that are conspiring against the NCAA. That is the NCAA completely failing to communicate the goddamn rules to the schools. But the NCAA and those geriatric assholes running it won't admit they made mistakes. They will punish severely and quietly correct themselves 6 months after the findings are announced. Look, let's not kid ourselves here. This is a really bad situation for Tennessee. Regardless of the NCAA's bullshit, if they genuinely fucked up across multiple sports with NIL and other infractions, that's a lack of institutional control. And that is the most feared phrase in all of the NCAA. And it could spell doom for Tennessee. Why? Remember when I said Tennessee was under probation? If these violations happened while under probation, that's a violation of the repeat violator rule. And you want to know what the most severe punishment for this is? How about you go ask SMU? They will tell you all about how their football program was terminated. Not suspended, terminated. No more football, no more SEC, no more nothing. Program reduced to fucking atoms. However, just because that's what the most severe punishment in the rule book is, does not mean that's what the NCAA is going to do. Considering multiple schools have appeared to make the same mistake, I can see Tennessee getting whacked with a 1 or 2 year bowl ban. I mean, yeah, that's a pretty bad punishment and it'll cause a lot of players to leave via the transfer portal. But that's honestly the worst punishment the NCAA can honestly stomach. SMU didn't become relevant again until 2010 after the death penalty in the 1980s, and Tennessee, being an SEC school, also saves them a lot of face, as I doubt any mid-major would be given the same treatment as Tennessee if the situation was reversed. My shit post isn't going to change the NCAA. It isn't going to solve the problems that system puts itself into. But what is clear is this. The NCAA has fucked this one up with many schools. Yet again, a system always playing catch-up continues to stumble over itself. Tennessee's letter to the NCAA made it clear they are not taking this lying down. They're going to fight any allegations that are made by the NCAA by calling attention to the hypocrisy and the bullshit that the NCAA promotes. Do you have any idea how bad you gotta fuck up for me, of all people, to have sympathy with a team from the SEC? Holy fucking shit. God damn, what a mess.